Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Hope you're all doing amazing today. In this video, we're diving into the latest updates about Kelly Ripa and Mark Consuelos. You don't want to miss this. So make sure to stay tuned till the end, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. The lights inside the Ripa Consuelos home were dim, the curtains half drawn against a soft New York drizzle that painted gentle streaks on the windows. Everything felt unusually still, like the house was holding its breath. Mark sat in the corner of the living room, the faint hum of the heater filling the silence. A thick medical folder rested on the coffee table in front of him. Kelly paced nearby, her arms wrapped around herself as if she was holding her heart together. For weeks, they had both sensed it, an unease creeping into their lives in ways they didn't want to acknowledge. Mark's fatigue, the sudden pain, the unexplained weakness. They kept hoping it was stress, exhaustion, anything but the dreaded possibility that now stared at them from the inside of that folder. Kelly paused, staring at the man she loved more than anything. Mark lifted his eyes to meet hers. They were warm, soft, but shadowed with fear. "Are you ready?" Kelly whispered. Mark nodded slowly. "Let's read it." He opened the file. Kelly stepped closer, trembling, and then, in a single moment, everything changed. The diagnosis was there in clinical black and white. And yet it felt unreal, like a punch coming from a life they never expected to fight. Kelly's breath caught in her throat. "Mark, this can't be happening." He reached for her hand. "We'll get through this," he said, but even he could hear the tremor in his own voice. A storm inside the sunshine. Mark Consuelos had always been the strong one. The athlete, the anchor, the unshakable presence beside Kelly through all the chaos of live television, raising children, building careers. To see him weakened, vulnerable, it broke something deep inside her. She sat beside him and finally let the tears fall, pressing her forehead to his shoulder. Mark wrapped his arms around her, even though he himself felt like collapsing. "Hey," he murmured softly, "I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere." "You can't make promises like that," she cried. "I can promise I'm going to fight," he replied, voice thick but steady. Kelly pulled back and looked into his eyes. "And I'll fight with you. Every single step." The rain intensified outside, as if echoing her grief. The world felt heavy, but within the heaviness there was a spark of fierce love that neither illness nor fear could extinguish. The kids break down too. Later that evening, they gathered their children, Michael, Lola, and Joaquin, around the kitchen table. The kids sensed something was wrong before a single word was spoken. Kelly tried to explain, but her voice broke. It was Mark who forced himself to say it clearly, gently, bravely. The room fell silent except for the quiet sobs of their children. Joaquin hugged his father tightly, pressing his face into his chest. Lola wiped away tears angrily, as if refusing to accept reality. Michael stood frozen, jaw clenched, trying to be strong but failing as his own tears finally spilled. Mark held all three close. "This isn't the end," he told them. "It's just a battle we're all going to win together." But despite his reassurance, nothing felt stable. The air was filled with trembling fear, a fear they all tried to swallow but couldn't. Kelly faces the cameras, but breaks. The next morning, Kelly prepared to go live with Kelly and Mark. The makeup artists worked quietly around her, sensing her heavy mood. She forced a smile, tried to breathe, but the weight on her chest refused to lift. When the show began, she managed her usual charm for the first few minutes. But during a segment about family, something inside her cracked. Her voice faltered. Tears welled up, uninvited. She turned away from the camera, shaking. Mark, watching from backstage, felt his heart twist. He stepped onto the set, ignoring protocol. The audience gasped softly. He placed a gentle hand on her back. "It's okay," he whispered. She leaned into him, crying silently. The cameras, though still rolling, felt irrelevant. All that mattered was the love between them, raw and real. The episode cut to commercial early, and inside the studio, Mark held her as she sobbed into his chest. A flood of support and private struggles, news spread quickly. Fans poured in with messages of support. Celebrities reached out. Friends offered help, prayers, encouragement. But behind the flood of love, the private battle was only intensifying. Mark's treatments began. Long hours in cold hospital rooms. Needles, machines, a constant rotation of tests. Some days he felt strong enough to joke. Other days he could barely stand. Kelly never left his side. She held his hand during treatments, brought him warm blankets, whispered encouragement, wiped his tears when he tried to hide them. She saw him wince in pain. She saw him lose weight. She saw him try to stay strong for her even when he was exhausted. And every time she saw him suffer, her heart shattered a little more. Midnight confessions. One night, Mark woke up breathless, drenched in sweat. Kelly sat up instantly, reaching for him. "I'm okay," he said, trying to catch his breath. She held his face in her hands. "Mark, you don't have to pretend with me." "Not now." He closed his eyes, tears escaping. "I'm scared, Kel." Her heart twisted. "I know," she whispered, "and I'm scared too. But you're not alone. You'll never be alone." He pulled her into an embrace, their breaths sensing, their fears silently shared in the darkness. For the first time since the diagnosis, Mark allowed himself to cry freely in her arms. Kelly wiped his tears gently. "You are the love of my life," she said, "and we are not giving up." A glimpse of hope weeks passed. The treatments were brutal, but slowly, Mark's doctors began to see positive signs. The tumor had stopped growing. Some markers were improving. It wasn't victory yet, but it was hope. Real hope. The family celebrated quietly, cautiously, but with grateful hearts. Mark joked again. Kelly smiled without forcing it. The kids laughed more often. The heaviness that filled the house began to lift, little by little. One evening, Mark and Kelly sat on the balcony, wrapped in blankets, watching the sun set over the city's skyline. "Do you ever think about how strong you've become?" Mark asked softly. Kelly shook her head. "No, I only think about how strong you've been." He kissed her forehead. "I'm strong because you're here." She leaned into him, tears glistening, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming love she felt. Love stronger than fear. The battle was far from over. There would be more treatments, more complications, more nights filled with worry. But something had changed in them, something powerful. They had always been partners, lovers, teammates. But now they were warriors, fighters, a united force against something terrifying yet not unbeatable. Mark knew that no matter how many obstacles stood in his way, he had a reason to keep fighting, a reason brighter than any fear. And that reason was Kelly. She had cried for him, broken for him, held him through the worst storm of his life. And now she stood as the strongest pillar he could ever lean on. Under the fading sky, as the city lights flickered to life, Kelly whispered, "We're going to win this, Mark. Together." He smiled, tired but full of hope. Together. And the story continues. Their journey wasn't a fairy tale. It was messy, painful, frightening. But it was also filled with courage, resilience, and the deepest kind of love. A love capable of surviving even the darkest moments. A love that transforms fear into hope. A love that refuses to let go. And though the road ahead remained uncertain, one thing was clear. They would walk it side by side, hand in hand, with hearts unbreakable. Stay tuned for all the updates about Kelly Ripa. We are the first to publish all the information about Kelly Ripa and Mark Consuelos, so stay with us to get all the latest updates. And stay tuned to our Kelly and Mark report for all updates.